before we even get started, I just want to put out a public service announcement. New York is done. Music-wise, New York is done. And I don't give a fuck if I'm not from New York. I'm stripping you guys of your title. You are no longer the home of hip-hop. You are the home of Biden. And, yeah, you're the home of the biter. I'm not a biter. I'm a writer. No. You guys are the home of the biter now, all right? As long as New York is being represented by blood culture, you get no respect. None. Y'all were the first ones running your fucking mouths about the West Coast and how stupid they was and woo-de-woo and fuck Compton and all the different shit just for your fucking babies to come back later and dick ride the fuck out of LA. Y'all are done, okay? Just want y'all to know that. This is not New York. This is LA, okay? Okay, what nobody say. And I know we shouldn't be, celebrating this stuff, period. But I'm saying that because that's my point. Like, y'all used to be the beacon of information. Now y'all baby LA. Horrible, terrible. All right, now let's get started with this beautiful video. Had to bring it in like water, baby. So what's up, guys? What's happening? I know it's kind of hard getting coverage on this page because, it's so fresh and so new. So I figured this time, hey, maybe I can give them something to ruffle their feathers. Maybe they'll see what's going on here. Hold on. Transatlantic or Caribbean. In life, guys, you are going to be misled by a lot of things. It won't just be this information that will be misleading you in your one life. There are so many things that you guys are going to be imprisoned to, brainwashed by, led amok, led astray, betrayed. So many things. All through school, we are told that these people came over here from these. We are told that it was a great slave trade called the Transatlantic trade, and also we were also told about a great voyage to the Americas and yada 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 yada, and that's great. There's just so many problems with what we were told by what we were also told that we are kind of idiots for even agreeing. Let's get the best presentation of a map, something that's not perfect. All right, now how can we make this the whole screen? All right, beautiful. So, this is a Sunday, and happy Sunday to you. So you should be learning something, right? So let's learn something. Okay. And this is from Wikipedia. So This is supposed to be a true interpretation of the world map. And I believe it. It seems accurate. So, if we take the story that the European gave us, and we go from Africa to America, that's what they're saying. They're not saying that West Africans were took all the way up to Europe and then taken over here. They never said that. They said they were taken from Africa to America. The door of no return and all this different stuff. Okay, it's West Africa. And they're saying from there they sailed across the ocean blue to America. But if you look on the map, you can clearly see West Africa, which is this area right here. It's going to land right here. It's going to land in Brazil. Okay. The reason I'm asking, was it a transatlantic slave trade or was it a Caribbean slave trade, is because obviously these boats went from West Africa to here. I don't believe that the boats from Europe or from Africa went straight across. I don't believe that. The reason I don't believe it is because, for one, the first person that they have come over here are some Portuguese and Columbus, some Spaniard or Italian, whatever, however you want to look at it. They don't land in North America. Neither one of them did. The Portuguese landed in Brazil. Christopher Columbus lands in what we call Hispaniola, but it's Dominicans and Haitians, or Tainos, however you want to call it. Then the very next year he goes to Puerto Rico. Okay, all of that is Caribbean. That is all Caribbean. So I'm challenging your brain. I'm challenging the school you went to, because I know people don't understand that this has a bigger piece to it. This is why I need to drop the Harry Truman video so you guys can get the full understanding. All this stuff really went down in the early 1900s. Once you get the Noble Drew Ali's out here talking, and Marcus Garvey's, and Elijah Muhammad's, or Farad Muhammad's, once you get that going in the 30s, you could say the 1900s, like 1916, the 20s, and the 30s. Once you get that going, we get to the 40s, and that's where the Truman Show starts. Hence why they ended up making a movie called The Truman Show. I really think this is reverting back to Harry Truman, and I'm going to explain why in another video. It's going to be a video all to him. It's all to the 33rd president, Harry S. Truman. It's very deep, very interesting. But for them to say that they went from West Africa and then cruised up, then went all the way across, makes no sense. There's a reason that historically Christopher Columbus he meets the Dominicans, Haitians, and the Puerto Ricans. And there's also a reason that the Portuguese, when they first come over here, they meet some Brazilians. And there's also a reason that slavery is in the South. And there's also a reason that all these boats arrive in the South. There is a reason for that. And it's because of the Caribbean slave trade. All of these Africans, this is the weirdest thing. Everybody keeps talking about North America and Black Power and all this different stuff. But here's the weird thing. The biggest slave port, the the biggest port of moving slaves to wherever they were going is Havana, Cuba. Okay, Havana, Cuba is right here in the Caribbean. Okay, that's down. That's not up here in the South, where you guys are claiming that these, the slavery happened. No, it's down here. So where is this boat coming from over here that is landing right here? You believe it's coming from Europe? You believe it's coming from Northern Africa, which has nothing to do with the slave trade? Or you believe they're coming from West Africa, where they told us? Okay, cool. Why would you think that they're going from West Africa all the way up here in this area, Virginia, Massachusetts? Because you got to remember, they claim that they came over here from Europe, which makes more sense. Hence why the Quakers first landed in Nantucket. That makes sense. That's a lot closer. But for you to say from West Africa all the way up here, that's kind of insane. That really doesn't make any sense. Especially when people have already previously made it over here. The Quakers don't show up until like the 1600s, something like that. Okay, 1492, way back in the day. So people have already been to Brazil. People have already been to the Caribbean. They've already been in this area. All this has already been. Not talking about the indigenous people. I'm talking about the foreigners. Pilgrims don't come until the 1600s. Or if you want to push Jamestown 1500s, I have to ask you again, do you believe that those pilgrims came from Africa? No, you believe they came from England, right? Okay, but they had some slaves with them, right? So make it make sense. Are you saying they took the slaves all the way up to England and then left? Or were these slaves from England once they took over England and came to them and brought them to America? And that's why people say the first slaves on a boat were 20 Moors. That's what they say. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. I've heard the first slaves coming from the east were Moors. It was like 20 of them. Just like the first slaves being brought to the east from the west were some Indians. Christopher Columbus says it out of his own mouth that he took some Indians back with him. So I'm saying that to say this, because we can get to the facts. We already know that they've been lying about history, but now this is just globally proving to you that it doesn't make any sense for you to believe that they came from West Africa and then landed in Virginia just from the ride. No. When the biggest slave port is in Havana, Cuba, which is down here. It's a Caribbean slave trade. It's not a transatlantic slave trade. That's why they were able to do it. That's why they were able to do it, because they didn't come from across the water. The ones who went all the way from across the water, they barely made it. When the European comes from England to Massachusetts, he's barely alive. He's sick. He's autumn. It's been historically proven. Okay, they never said anything about Christopher Columbus being sick. They never said anything about the Portuguese being sick. They never said anything about the conquistadors being sick. They never said anything about that. Why? They never said anything about the Moors being sick. Why? Because it's the route that they took. They had to have went this way. They had to have went this way and took the current, and it ended up taking them like this. And that's how it happened. And that's why there's such a connection with Florida and the Caribbean still to this day. It ain't got nothing to do with the new race or ethnicities that they've made with the Spanish language or with the English language. No, it's always been like that. It's a certain riff in the water that will take you that way anyway. But that also concludes another thing about have indigenous Americans and original Africans ever met or done business with each other. It's quite possible, you know. That's before slave boats and fight the power and you know what I'm saying, black and that's before all this spell casting and all this other stuff. So those original people have nothing to do with you know, the lying, the scamming, and all that stuff of today. They don't have anything to do with that. What I will say is there's no such thing as a transatlantic slave trade. It was a Caribbean slave trade, and this is why they call it the Middle Passage. This is the funny thing. Where were they coming from? They were coming from Little Havana. They're coming from Cuba. So it is technically a middle passage because they're going two different ways. Some of them are going north, some of them are going south. They're being spread all across the Americas. So it makes sense why why it's originally called the Middle Passage. It makes sense. It's not a transatlantic slave trade. It's a Cuban slave. I mean, it's a Caribbean slave trade because the biggest export of slaves is through Havana. Nobody can deny it. So how the hell are Northern Americans bragging about some slave trade that technically they never even went through? To be honest, the main people that should be talking about Africa on the American side should be Cubans and Brazilians. Those should be the main two people saying it because they're where most of the slaves went. The slaves had to go through Little Havana. That's where all of them went. Okay, 4 million of them went to Brazil. The rest were scattered around. Only 387,000 went to North America. So it's like, even if you have a fight and you want to speak for those 380,000, that's fine. But why are you the biggest voice? That's what I'm wondering. Why is it? Like, you're the one with the CIA and the FBI. So it makes sense. You can see the depravity of the earth. You can see people are running like chickens with their heads cut off all over the place. Here's another weird thing. They basically framed y'all and you know, sprayed y'all up because people were still trying to escape to America during the whole pandemic. So it's like people couldn't have been dying to that degree if they're willing to still try to get around. If the cartel is willing to still move, like obviously nobody's looking at it. Obviously it's only for the people that's going to fall for it. Just like the transatlantic slave trade. I don't believe that that didn't happen. I've literally shown you through explanation that there's no way in hell you're going to tell me they came from down here and went all the way up here. That doesn't make any sense. They went from here to here. You know what I mean? Did the shuffle and then it got spreaded both ways. But you cannot say that they're coming from West Africa. This is the area that they're mainly talking about. And that they would float all the way to Virginia up there. It's just not adding. It's like nobody's going to do that like that. The ones who did it like this, straight across, like I said, they barely made it. They barely made it. The smartest thing would be is to go to, like I said, the Caribbean area. And you wonder why most of the slaves went from West Africa went to Brazil. Look, it's right there. It's right across. You know what I'm saying? How did the slaves get in the Carolinas? Where did that boat come from? Did it come from across the Atlantic? Or did it just come from right here in the Atlantic area and shifted up? That's real talk. They were shuffling Indians or American Indians up and down this slave trade. They weren't just leaving them there. That's why there's so many tribes that's gone, disappeared, because they were shifting them around. They were just moving them different places. That's what happened. You don't need to bring 1 billion people over some place where there's already 1 billion people. And that's the thing. But why would they play it that way? Because, you know, it sells and they make money off it. But look what it's done to a whole nation of people. They actually think they know what they're talking about. But the more you figure out the story, the more you're going to look at yourself and say, well, a lot of these teachings have to have flaws in them. But why are they presenting them? Who was their teachers? You know what I'm saying? Why are they having, you know, backgrounds of being initiated in these fraternities, these groups? You know what I mean? And what was the whole point of, you know, telling the lie anyway? That's my big question. It's like, what was the whole point of it? What was the whole point of telling the lie? Was it that at the end of the day it was going to, you know, seize capital all over the world and have people brain dead, and you could become a worldwide, socialist capitalist. I don't know. It seems like he's checking out. So, you know what I'm saying? You can't say that that theory wouldn't be conclusive. It's summing up to, it seems like that's what it is. And everybody, we can continue doing what we're doing, get more lies, get more schemes done, more chaoticness all over the earth. This is not about, dissing nobody. That's why I came cool, calm, and collective on this one. This is about, was it a transatlantic or was it a Caribbean? Because the trail just doesn't add up, and I think that's the argument. That's why they had to make the drawings of the sardine-looking people, and they had to play this role out, make it seem like it was really, really plausible back then. The people that did make it barely made it. Your best bet is to go through Northern Africa. If you were going to North America, your best bet is to try to land in Northern Africa. It's a little more out there. At least you're, quicker to reach that land, opposed to going to all the way to England. And as far as West Africa goes, it's right there by Brazil. So it makes sense why they brought more of those Africans there. Everybody else was spread it out. You know what I'm saying? It's 12 million altogether. Everybody else is spread it out. But the majority of them, one bulk, are Brazil. And you can see why clearly by just looking at the map. So, think again when you think that they talking about, them just selling the whole ocean. No. No. They took the short route. Brazil poked out. Brazil got his check poked out. West Africa right there. And that's why you can float to North Africa too. But when it comes to England and West Africa, okay, that's a different story. But why would they go from West Africa all the way there? That doesn't make any sense. And the biggest port is in Cuba. So we already know where your boats were coming from. That's why they're all in the south. Goes.